Hi, it's James from Enso. Today we're going to look at day 2 of Advent of Code. I've already set up the workflow and copied in the example from the text and loaded in a link to my own dataset that I need to use. Goal in this one is to look at certain ranges and look for when there are numbers that are repeats of each other, so like 11, 22 and so on. Let's start and parse the input. As many people who've worked with me know, I like using regex, and for this Enso has a very helpful function, parse the table, which will take a regular expression and turn the text into a table. So in this case, the pattern I'm going to use is going to look for a number, so /d plus, followed by a minus, and then look for a second number, followed by either a comma or the end of the string. And I don't need to capture the comma or the end of the string, so I will mark that matching group as non-matching. The first two groups I've marked with a name using the syntax of a question mark and then a name in the angle brackets. In Enso, that makes it automatically use those as column names. So let's have a look at the result. So straight out of here, we now get the parse table, which we can now work with and look at the answer. I did have a think and tried to come up with a clever way to do it numerically, but I couldn't come up with any good solutions, so I'm going to do a relatively brute force approach, generate the rows between the minimum and maximum, and look for any cases where the number meets the required pattern. We can do that using the generate rows function in Enso. Specify we want to work over an integer range from the min to the max, and I want to include the final value. This will take a minute or two just to generate the rows. Not too bad on the sample case, but on the real setup it'll take a little bit longer. And then what I can do from there is now I can look and see if the rows match the pattern. So I'm going to do a filter, and I'm going to filter on an expression. But first I'm going to rename the generated row to a better name. So let's call it value. I'm going to filter where the formatted value, this turns it into a string, matches a regular expression. So let's go in here, look in text, and use regex match. And in this case, what I want to match is that it matches a numerical block followed by that block repeated, and that completes the whole string. So starting from the beginning to the end, one number and then that number repeated. We'll tell it to run that. Look at the result. Let's just check and make sure we've got what we expect. 11, 22, 99, that's looking good. 10, 10, 1, 1, 8, 5, 1, 1, 8, 5, perfect. Last, I just need to total it up. I could do that using an aggregate. On sum over the value. 1227775554, which is the sample. Let's now try it on the real data set and see what we get. We can see generating the rows. This will take a little bit longer because this is a bigger data set now. So it generates 2.6 million rows and answers it straight away. I'm just going to pause video while I paste part 2 and then we'll have a look at part 2. I've now added the text for part 2 into the documentation, and what we need to do here is now look for when there is at least 2 repeated blocks, so 2 or more. That's a very reasonably straightforward change. If I copy this regular expression and put that one in, instead of looking at the back reference occurring once, I want it to occur at least once. I did realize I didn't explain what the /1 means for those who aren't familiar. /1 is a back reference in regular expressions, so it matches this group here and makes sure it's repeated. And this says that this repeated back reference must occur at least once to get to the end. Again, we'll have another aggregate, put that at the end, switch back to the input set to make sure it's correct, and check that we've produced the 417379,265. Switching back over to my data set, and then hopefully in a second we'll have the result for mine. That completes day 2